we've got a situation where, well, well, I mean, I don't want to go. I keep going on it, but they keep making bad moves all over in terms of the control system. I don't think they have any other bright ideas, though. You know, they look at the technology, they say, oh, we can use it to do this, but the people that are looking at that technology and are going to implement it don't consider ancillary social side effects or responses. They don't understand that, you know, you poke universe here, it's going to cause a bulge over there, and you gotta worry about it. You know, the finger in the hole in the dike, and then you cause another hole to open up, kind of an effect, right? Universe responds that way, and we're seeing it happen here.
Yeah, well, what I was thought about this is if it's designed to make people, kind of detached and lose their thinking, make people sick, then it's a great success with the smart grid that's coming in, that for sure, with the Wi-Fi.
Oh, yeah. Terrible stuff, yeah. But of course, now we're also seeing the anti-wave. There's people that are in the United States that are making money now by sewing clothing that is anti-radiative, anti-EMF. And they have baseball caps with mesh grids that clip to the mesh grid inside your windbreaker, which clips to the mesh grid that runs down into your pants so you can ground.
This is turning into one of those, sorry to interrupt, but this is turning into one of those, like, you know, Johnny Mnemonic kind of, you know, hacking dystopian future scenarios here, right? It's like,
you're right, especially where we are now, because the power structure is embedded here and it's reacting badly to losing power.
Jeez, wow. Well, what do you make about Bitcoin then? Just tell us a little bit about this. People are obviously for a long time now calling this a revolution and everything, but the value just keeps going up and up. Is it ever going to stop? What's going on there?
Sure, it'll actually stabilize in about 2000 and somewhere between 2036 and 2041 when the last Bitcoin is mined.
And wait, pause. Sorry, and this is based on Alta reports and that kind of information.
No. Let's back up.
Okay. All right.
Let's talk about this. In 2008, I ran across an obscure paper that was written by a guy by the name of nominally by the name of Satoshi Nakamura, and this is the fellow that invented the algorithm, the idea that is Bitcoin. And it is truly that. It is an algorithm. It's nothing more. It's just an idea. And he said, if you did things this way and you came up with this and so on. And then over the course of 2009, some people started developing code for it. And we started getting the first Bitcoin mining. Now, Satoshi's idea is the following. We need what's known as a free currency. That is a currency that does not have debt attached to it. So if I go and I get $1 from my bank, there's all kinds of debt attached to it. There's debt attached in the form of our, quote, national debt, because the Zionist bankers create the money from nothing and then lend it to us for interest.
That's right.
So there's other debts there too, the processing fees and all of this sort of thing. So if I go to get $1, 1 unit of currency, I really, in terms of purchasing power, instantly I'm only having 92 cents worth of a proportion of that purchasing power because of the fees and interest I have to pay on this. So the Satoshi said that, as part of the evolution of currency, and basically he piggybacks on the idea or restates the idea that, as part of the evolution of the internet, we must reinvent currency so that it is fair to the people and allows for growth. Now, you have to understand that we actually ran into a situation in the late 70s and early 80s globally where corporations decided that the analog phone system and analog television systems were limiting their potential for growth. Also limiting their potential for control, but they didn't tell us about that. They just talked about the growth and how we would have a happier future if we all went digital. And so we did. Now, in going digital, we opened ourselves up to some stuff very negative, all the NSA and all of this kind of stuff,
right?
The spying. However, we've also opened ourselves up to a radically new future of peer-to-peer. And we've been demonstrating that, because the people invented email and all of the other aspects of this, you've got creativity run amok with people writing code all the time, trying to come up with the next greatest app. It's a global competition. The creativity is truly just exploding. And one of the things that we need to facilitate that is this idea of a free currency. With a free currency, we should also have the ability to know that it's defined and it can't be artificially or deliberately inflated to nothing, which is what's happening with all the fiat currencies of the world now as they do their quantitative easing, which is another way of saying race to the bottom in terms of depreciating value. And so he said, well, let's put a finite peg on the number of these critters that can exist, And then natural human avarice and acquisitiveness will come into play, and they'll always escalate up to a certain point where they'll become more or less stable in terms of price once there is an equitable division based on the power structures of the world at the time. Okay, so he's not saying everybody's going to get an equal share of bitcoins. He's just saying that there will come a time where there is an equitable division based on who has the power and the wealth in the planet, and things will become stable. Yeah. And the prices of the bitcoins will become stable. But until then, they are bound to escalate because of the demographics involved. Because here's the thing, okay? Within the demographics involved, there's only going to be 21 million bitcoins. So just let's take another aside and look at gold. We could use gold in lieu of fiat currency, but there's only 2 billion ounces of gold that are available. There have been 4 billion ounces dug up, but only 2 billion ounces to go around on the planet. That wouldn't even satisfy the Indian population or the Chinese to 1 ounce each.
Right.
So that can't work. Plus it's heavy. You can't send it through the mail reliably and all of these kind of other issues. So we came up with a digital solution. And basically we reinvented money the same way we reinvented email, Skype, and all of this stuff. So this is money over internet, okay?
And why 21 million? Is this just a number they came up with? Is there a reasoning behind that?
No, there's a mathematical reason behind this. Okay, so let me explain a little bit about Bitcoin itself.
Sure.
To the novice here.
Yeah.
Bitcoin works because of a cooperative effort by all these PCs and servers that are hooked up to the internet. Bitcoin requires absolutely unique numbers to exist, numbers that have an algorithm that is based loosely on prime numbers, okay? And so each Bitcoin is uniquely identified. Each subset of a Bitcoin involved in a transaction is uniquely identified. And so it is trustless because you always know where the Bitcoins are. You don't have to worry about someone lying to you about what your account is in a bank, for instance. You can look at your account and see and track your history of the Bitcoin from the very first time you got involved all the way through at any time you want. And so basically it's a currency that maintains, it's smart currency. It maintains its own internal accounting, but it keeps it private because it doesn't identify itself to you in any way, shape, or form. If you choose not to identify that you have a Bitcoin, no one will ever know. The Bitcoin itself won't tell you. But Bitcoin provides a trustless accounting. It provides ease of transactions. And it does so because all of these computers are on the internet all the time, mining for these numbers. And by mining, that's a computer euphemism term for sitting there and running their floating point operations, their flops, against a prime number algorithm to come up with these numbers that Bitcoin uses in its backbone, if you will, to generate the unique IDs that go into each and every one of the Bitcoin transactions. That sort of makes sense?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so they're out there generating all these flops, all these floating point operations to develop new prime numbers, and that supports the backbone. But what else also supports the backbone are all the wallets doing all the transactions, because in a certain extent, they're also supplying all the electricity and this sort of thing. So now the miners are doing proof of work to generate a Bitcoin. So they're actually having to work their butts off to develop the algorithms, get the hardware in place, buy electricity to run it. So there's a cost of effort, just like there's the cost of effort of getting off the couch, getting the shovel, going out in the woods, finding the gold, digging it out of the ground.
Right.
Okay. So it's the same kind of thing at that stage. Only gold's pretty dumb. Okay. Gold doesn't know who it is. Gold can't transact, can't keep track of sub transactions. It can't provide you with an accounting. You can't transfer gold back and forth across the internet. And so Bitcoin eliminates a lot of the negativity about gold and silver. Now, in my way of thinking, in the future, just as an aside, we will end up with with a system that is basically precious metals and precious stones and resources backed cryptocurrencies. And it'll work where, you use a cryptocurrency to do settlement between people that are removed from each other, and then settle things locally by buying gold and silver with those cryptocurrencies. This is as the fiats disappear. But getting back to Bitcoin itself as a backbone runs very much like the internet. It runs across the IP addresses. It's got its own subspace, if you will. And a lot of people object the first time they load a Bitcoin wallet on their PC because they stop it after a couple of hours and they say, this has taken forever. Well, it's because it's got to load this blockchain in its entirety once onto your PC, and it's doing so against all of the other demands on the blockchain across the internet. So it can be rather slow. So for instance, even in 11, when I set up this PC here and I loaded a Bitcoin wallet on it, it took like probably 7 to 8 hours to load that wallet.
Jeez.
Now I hear if you choose the original Bitcoin wallet, which is called BTC or something along those lines, and you download it, by the way, all Bitcoin is open source. So there's people developing wallets and all kinds of layers on top of it and doing stuff with it like mad because it's open and transparent and you can see what's going on. But now I think if you load the older, slower wallets, it can take 24 hours for these to load because there's so much transactions going on in the Bitcoin space. There are ways to address this as we go forward in the future, and a lot of people are indeed doing that, and some of them are attempting to do it as a commercial operation and to make a little few Satoshis in the way. A Satoshi, by the way, is a fractional part of a Bitcoin. And, so it's also like pennies and dollars.
Okay.
Or, that's that sort of thing, pence and pounds. So it was just named after Satoshi Nakamura in honorarium for the effort. Even though the Nakamura is an allegorical figure, and it might have been a committee, it might have been this wild Russian mathematician that everybody points fingers to, or it might have been Max Kaiser for all we know that came up with Bitcoin.
So no one really knows. No one knows who it is. Yeah,
those who know aren't saying that's the case.
Yeah, right.
So anyway, here we are with Bitcoin a few years back. They started mining it. Wasn't worth much. Really the only people that cared about it were a few obscure gamers. Because they were into artificial currencies within their simulated games and so on. And so they started getting into it because it was sort of natural to them. And they were the very, very, very first early adopters. Now, I was out there and I didn't get into mining because I had my own operations and stuff going here, but I considered it for a while when I came across it because it was very nascent. We just had, I think, 2 or 3 miners actually on the net at that stage. But I knew that for me, that wasn't the position I needed to do to be in relative to Bitcoin because this was the game changer. I knew it was, and ever since I've had it on my site since like 2010 or 11 or something, where I accepted Bitcoins, I've always continuously stated that this is an end the Fed strategy. To use Bitcoin is a way to sidestep all of the terrible evils that the Zionist central banks have imposed on the planet. And let's bear in mind, there were no world wars until we had the first central banks set up. So, that really is a telling statistic right there. However evil the planet may have been, however terrible climate problems might have been in forcing, the Mongols to invade Europe, we did not have world war, organized death festivals until there were central banks trying to get people to basically to go into debt to pay for them.
Yeah.
Now, here's what I see going on. We wouldn't have had Vietnam as a war. We would have crashed our country. It bankrupted us in 1968, and the Tet Offensive was the first sign of that. A lot of people in our country here that went through the Tet Offensive will recognize one thing. Our guys got the absolute hell kicked out of them, and it was a logistics and supply issue. There were bases that had not been supplied for actual months ahead of the Tet Offensive because we had run into the beginning of the financial crisis that led Nixon to take us off the gold standard and close the gold window and open up the petrodollar window with Saudi Arabia. So we were that close in '68, and they kept it going by stopping the changing money from gold to oil. And now that's run out. We've hit peak oil, and it's no wonder the universe has provided us with Bitcoin just when the powers that be are going to ratchet everything down now that peak oil is here, and they won't be able to run their debt machine off of oil anymore.
Interesting. So let me ask you a couple of more things here before we wrap things up with the first hour, Cliff. You said that basically you can see the complete flow of every exchange that has been done with does every unit of Bitcoin has a unique identification that you can track?
Correct. And if you split them up into smaller units, you get new unique identifiers and you can track those.
See, that's pretty interesting because I've wondered about that in terms of money. I think that in itself, just looking at that data will be like a fascinating,
I've got it running on my site right now. There's a fascinating little app. If you go over to Half Past Human and you scroll down into the little sidebars, you'll see a thing where it says Fiat Leak. Okay. And Fiat Leak is a little application that shows you Bitcoins moving in real time into money moving in real time into Bitcoin from fiat currencies. And they're doing it by a combination of monitoring the exchanges and the backbone.
Interesting. Yeah, I was actually I clicked into that, not too long ago, looking at that. That's pretty amazing stuff. Now, so let's say, maybe we can just take this in the last 5 minutes or so, if possible. If someone just wants to buy, how is it done? Where do they go? The easiest way you can explain it, Cliff.
You're really lucky if you live outside the United States, because most of the exchanges to buy are outside the United States. You can go to just look up Bitcoin Exchange. And if you want to buy local, almost every place anymore, you can get access to Craigslist or local classifieds, and you'll see people selling Bitcoins. Whether you meet them up, they send them across on the smartphone, and you hand them currency or buy them a coffee or whatever.
And that's it.
Yeah, that's it. It's not that difficult to buy the Bitcoins. The prices are going up. You're going to have there are places in the United States, for instance, you can go to places like Coinbase.com. Okay, but the exchanges that exist now, by the way, are not markets. And here's a difference. In a market, you want to buy a stock, you go to a stockbroker. Well, the stockbroker nominally says that he's going to match you up with a seller. Fact is, they own that stock that they sell you. They've already purchased it in anticipation of your needing it, so to speak, right? And in fact, over half of all the stocks are counterfeit even. They can just create them as they wish and take your money. And there's no way of knowing. So within Bitcoin, that doesn't exist. You've got a situation where the uniqueness of Bitcoin allows the ability to overcome those kind of limitations, and you get away from that level of transaction. But there are no markets. The Coinbase does not own Bitcoins to sell you. They actually have to match you up. So what they do is they set up a queue. So you set up an account, you transfer money from or give them permission to take money out of your bank account to buy Bitcoins, and then they put you in a queue. They basically say, take a number and wait. And, it's all automated, and they go buy the Bitcoins on your behalf, but you have to agree ahead of time to pay whatever is the going price is at that point, or set a limit as to how much you're going to pay. And at this point, people are just simply not setting limits. They're simply paying it because there's, let me tell you three really nasty, terrible statistics for the powers that be. And this will be chilling to any of the minions that are actually listening to this when it hits them, okay? And here's the statistics, and it'll sum it up real quickly. Bitcoin came into existence in 2009, so we've barely had just a few years of it. You've seen the price escalation already recently. Now, here's the statistics. Most Chinese people have never heard of Bitcoin. Most Hindu people have never heard of Bitcoin. Most of the people on the planet have never heard of Bitcoin. And this is an idea that's taking off.
Yep.
So what's the price going to be when 1% of the Chinese people have heard of it and half of them want it? What's that price going to be when I can give you some estimates as to what it must be at certain specific points. So for instance, there's this manipulated market now called the Forex, which is the foreign exchange market where banks steal from each other and try and rape and pillage countries. And they are successful in raping and pillaging countries and stealing from each other at this Forex market. Totally manipulated. Okay. And it is a huge market, currency swapping back and forth. If Bitcoin, which will never, ever, ever trade on Forex, it's impossible for it to trade as a currency on Forex for a lot of different reasons. But if it took 1/10 of 1% of today's Forex market, it would have to be $42,000 each Bitcoin.
Wait a minute, say that again.
If Bitcoin right now were trading at a volume level that was 1/10 of 1% of the volume that went through the Forex today, each Bitcoin would have to be worth $42,000.
Wow. What is it at today then? What's the exchange rate?
I can tell you actually in real time. Hang on, let me grab my glasses here and swap over to another screen. Yep. There's a dozen different exchanges. So when you say the exchange rate, it's kind of like, well, where are we talking? Okay. Huh. But let's say there's an aggregate, and right at the moment in the US dollars, it's varying from 695 to 830, depending on which exchange is selling and buying. In Chinese currency, it's much more stable, and it's at about 5,105 CNY. It's still rising, 5,111, 5,120. So it's rising very rapidly in the Chinese currency and not dropping back down. We see it drop back down in American currency, in the dollars, as those people with Bitcoin sell them off to the Chinese and others who want to buy them. And take a profit, so to speak. They'll sell them at a specific price, and then that's reported here. But mostly the Chinese are buying. They're simply not selling. And thus the price is escalating. A real telling statistic there is that we're now at over 5,000. And it was barely a week ago we'd crossed, or 2 weeks ago, we'd crossed 1,000 CNY, Chinese national yuan, to the Bitcoin. And most Chinese have not heard of Bitcoin yet.
Yeah.
Most Americans haven't heard of it. How many Swedes know about it? Do you have a Bitcoin wallet?
Few. No, I don't.
You're an early adopter guy.
Well, exactly. I want to get into it. That's why I'm asking you so many questions about it now. But
here's the thing.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Bitcoin in a practical sense then.
Mm-hmm.
It's open source. You can download Bitcoin wallets just by going and doing a search for them. Get a good one. There's a bunch of different kinds, multi-bit if you're English speaker, but there's many different native language wallets being written and so on. There's the original one called Bitcoin Wallet, and that's got an interesting thing because there's this add-on to the Bitcoin Wallet, the very original one that takes a long time to load. And this add-on is called Armory. And Armory allows you to print off a backup of all your Bitcoin numbers. So if your PC had a meteorite come on down and take it out, destroy it completely, you'd be able to take that list and go and recreate your wallet and type in all the numbers and recreate your access to those Bitcoins so you wouldn't lose them. So that's a good thing, is to be able to do these backups in non-digital formats.
Interesting. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's something to definitely look into if you're not into it yet. And I'm certainly going to try to do some of my homework on this to be able to get some. But
they label Swedish currency as SEK, right?
That's correct. Yeah. Okay,
because you guys are at now 540.26 SEK to the Bitcoin.
Oh. Say that again. How much was it?
540.26 in the last trade.
26. Okay, yeah, that's pretty good. That's quite a bit. Yeah, 5,440.6 Swedish crowns. Yeah. So that's just for one Bitcoin.
Correct.
And that used to be obviously very, very much lower. Let's say 2 years ago.
Yeah. 2 years ago, when I first started getting into Bitcoin and started yelling at everybody, Bitcoin, it was $4 US.
Wow. Yeah.
And then it broke through 40 and everybody got excited. And I started yelling even harder because I knew it was going to break through 400. now I'm yelling at everybody because I know it's going to break through 4,000.
Well,
because most Chinese and most Hindus and most of the people on the planet haven't heard of it, and it's a damn fine idea.
Well, I have to buy some Satoshi before I go for the full, Bitcoin there.
Yeah, it's getting expensive.
Yeah, it is expensive.
That's the beauty of it, though, is that it's instantly divisible.
Yeah.
So we will indeed, unfortunately, there was no way, and there was actually a big concerted effort in the early days of the Bitcoin to figure out a way to make it equitable so that a bunch of gamers didn't end up being, the richest people on the planet. And actually, the richest people on the planet will be vied for by this small alpaca farm in Iowa in central United States, because they were the very first commercial operation that accepted Bitcoin way back when Bitcoins were worth less than $1, and they would sell you alpaca socks for Bitcoins. And you had to do something with them. Some of these people had thousands of them, so they bought everybody they knew alpaca socks.
Lana's going to love that. She loves alpacas and llamas, so that's cool.
Well, so these people are going to end up being super rich because they've been selling alpaca socks for Bitcoins for years now.
Interesting.
Just a curiosity. But they actually did, social engineering wise, there was a big concerted effort to try and figure out some way to distribute them in a fashion that would be more equitable. But nobody could come up with anything, that didn't benefit some basically undeserved group. So they just decided, hell, let's allow the universe to decide who's the undeserved people that are going to benefit.
All right.
Might as well be you guys.
Yeah, well, well, that's very good. Well, let's pick this up here in the second half here then, Cliff. Give us your website and tell us again how people can get a hold of your Alta reports as well. You're continuing to put those out regularly, correct?
Continuing to put them out irregularly based on what's going on here really is what it amounts to. Plus we've run into some real software issues, the bandwidth limitations that you were discussing.
Yeah.
The guy who runs my server lives on the backside of one of those.
Oh, no. Jesus.
Yeah, we've had issues negotiating contracts and stuff, but he's moving, so that'll change. But we're putting them out irregularly. The site is halfpasthuman.com. And the reports are ALTA, and that's for asymmetric linguistic trend analysis. And you can just use a PayPal button, but I'd prefer to receive a couple of Satoshis. But here's the deal. The price on the reports is rising so fast that I'm not going to keep resetting the value in Bitcoins. So adjust the Bitcoin, the Satoshis down. And if I don't think it's fair, I'll let you know.
All right. Okay. halfpasshuman.com will get you more information. I'm going to ask you a little bit more about the latest Delta reports. I also want to ask him about Comet Izon and a few other items as well. So stay with us, everybody. We'll be right back with more.